Today's daf we're going to be learning is Sotah Daf Yud Bet. We're going to continue in these great drashot about Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt. So we were in the middle of drashot about Kalev and Miriam. So we had Kalev ben Chetzron. By the way, there's a whole debate between the Bavli and Yerushalmi about whether Kalev ben Chetzron is the same person as Kalev ben Yefuneh. Our Gemara obviously says they're the same person. That's what we ended yesterday. And Yefuneh is just a name given by the Tanakh to teach about who he was. But Hana me'atzat meraglim, he turned the other way. And then we said, but what about Ben Knaz? Isn't he the brother of Otniel ben Knaz? And then we said, Chorgodik Knaz Havad. He was the stepbrother of Knaz. They shared the same mother. And we can learn this further from the verse, as it calls Kalev the Knizi. It doesn't call him Ben Knaz, it calls him the Knizi, which means he was part of the Knizi family because his wife married Knizi, the Knaz. But that's not that it was actually his father. Azuvah. Now we have again that pasuk. It started with Kalev and Chetzron gave birth to Azuvah, Isha ve'et Yiriot. So what is Azuvah? What is Yiriot? And what does it mean he gave birth to them? Azuvah is Miriam. So obviously Kalev didn't give birth to her. We'll get back to that. Why was she called Lamani Kashma Azuvah? We're going to see all sorts of midrashim that she was sickly in the beginning of her, or earlier in life at some point. Shakol Azavua mitchilata. They all put her aside in the beginning because she was sick. Rashi says she was cholanit. Okay, and we'll get to this soon in the Gemara as well. Holid v'halo minsav havanasi, but wasn't he married to her? Not that he gave birth to her. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, kol hanosei isha l'shem shamayim. Anyone who marries the woman for the right intentions. Now here, clearly, if she was sickly and maybe even ugly, then that he must have married her with good intentions. Wasn't marrying her, let's say, just for her looks. It's as if he birthed her. So that's why it says he was holid, but even though he really married her. Yiriot means curtains. So who's this woman who's curtains? Well, it happens to be another name for Miriam. They're saying her face was pale. It was like pale curtains. And then it says, and these are her children, Yesher, V'Shovav, V'Ardon. So now they say, these are the ones who built her, meaning this is another name for Kalev. He built a house with her, built a home, built children. Yeshel, she. Now all these three names are names for Kalev, again describing attributes of his. Yeshel, she sheret atzmo, he straightened himself, meaning all the spies were going in one way, and Kalev said, no, I'm not going with you, right? He straightened himself out. Shovav, shechi bevet yitzcho. He kind of fought against. Shovav is usually someone wild. Well, he was wild with his yetzer. Okay, Rashi even says it mored, like Shoveva is used in terms of rebellion. He rebelled against his evil inclination by, again, going against the tide with the spies. And third thing, Ardon. Why Ardon? He put his yetzer down. These are all terms showing how he fought against the tides and went his own way in the spies and didn't go along with them. Okay. Ika de Amre. Some people say Ardon is al shayu paneha domim levered. It's more about Miriam and that her face was like a rose. Okay, we're going to see later that she started off sickly, but then became beautiful. Here's a pasuk, another pasuk in Chronicles. That first pasuk was from Chronicles, talking about presumably somebody else. But the Midrash is going to connect this to Kalev as well and say that Ashur was really Kalev. He was called Avit Koa, which we're going to explain in a minute. And he had two wives, Chala and Na'ara. And that's also going to be a reference to Miriam. Ashur ze Kalev, Alam Kashmo Ashur, Shehushcheru Pana B'Taniyot. His face blackened with fast. He was fasting a lot in order to give him the strength that he needed, the not physical strength, obviously, but the emotional, inner strength to be able to counter the meraglim, the spies. And then Avi shenasa lake'av, he was like her, he was to Miriam like a father. Oh, why like a father, by the way? Because she was sick and he took care of her. He tended to all of her needs. And then the last one, Tekoa, goes back to seemingly again, possibly you could explain it some other way, but probably in the incident with the spies, he deep-rooted his heart with God and kind of like your taka peg, he pushed it into place. His heart was set to be with God. Hayushte nashim. What are these two wives? Naaset Miriam k'shtei nashim. Miriam was like two wives. Chal'ah v'na'ara. Lo chal'ah v'na'ara have ela. Well, it's not that she was sick and like a young woman. Ela b'tchila chal'ah u'levasof na'ara. This is one person. First she was sick, then she became youthful and young, like a young girl. Ubnei chal'at seret v'tzohar ve'etna. Now we have the three sons. Seret shena'aseh tzara lechavroteha. Once she became beautiful again, she became like a second wife to the other women, which is always the rival wife, basically meaning that everyone saw how beautiful she was, and then it kind of caused problems for other women because they wanted to be as beautiful as she was. The people, I guess, were jealous of her. Sohar shayu paneh domin ketzoraim. Her face was like the afternoon. Etnan, it's supposed to be a compliment. Etnan shekol haro'eh ota molicha etnan lishto. Etnan is a gift. So all the men would see her and be so taken by her beauty that they would go home to their wives and bring them gifts. It would cause their desire to be aroused. Vayitzav Paro lechol amo. And that was all sorts of drashot on Kalev and Miriam. Okay, Miriam, we had a lot of issues with change in her life from when she was more sickly to healthy and beautiful. And Kalev, it was a lot about him fighting against the spies and doing things the right way. Vayitzav Paro lechol amo. Now we get back to Paro. So Paro says to his entire nation, it says, any son, any male child born, should be sent into the Shiur, and that's because his stargazers, his astrologers saw that the Jews there was going to be someone born who was going to save the Jewish people. So he told them, send all the boys into the Shiur, throw them into the Nile, and the girls you can let live. So what happens? Something weird is in that pasuk. He told his whole nation that they should throw the boys into the Shiur. It sounds like it's actually to everybody. Even they have to throw their children into the Nile. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina af alamo gazal. And Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, yeah, they also had to. V'amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina shalosh gzerot gazal. It went like this: 3 gzerot. B'tchila, in the beginning, im benu v'amitenoto. First, it was just told the midwives, if you see it's a son, kill them. That was just Jewish. And then after he said, everyone, he saw the midwives weren't killing, so he said, everybody has to be, you have to throw all the babies into the Shiur. And in fact, it seems he set Egyptians up to check that they were doing this, and they were supposed to send them. But then he saw that this wasn't resolving the issue. And, his stargazers were still saying, oh, it's in the stars that someone's going to come and save the Jewish people. And then he said, you know what, even the Egyptians, maybe it's going to come from among the Egyptians. Maybe it's an allusion to the fact that the savior ends up coming from at least his household, even if it wasn't his own child. So now it says, the next thing is, so someone from the house of Levi goes and takes a woman from Levi's house. So we're going to darshan this pasuk. Where did he go? Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Zvina, and today we're going to see a bunch of midrashim that you might be very familiar with. Some of them because Rashi quotes them on the Torah, and we were brought up learning them, and some of them not so much, and some of them may be in a more elaborate form, more detailed. Anyway, this is somewhat of the more famous ones. You might know it, which is halach b'atzat bito. He went in the way of the advice he got from his daughter Miriam. This is good advice for anyone, that sometimes your kids have excellent advice and you should listen to them. So what happened? She was very young at the time. Tana Amram, again, it's a midrash. Whether that means basically it's not necessarily to happen this way, but they want to teach you a message. Tana Amram Gadol Hadol Haya. He was one of the most important people of his generation. Since he heard Paro say, all the sons have to be thrown into the Nile, he said, what's the point of having children? He goes and divorces his wife. Everybody followed suit, and they all also divorced their wives because he was the leader. She goes to her father and says, I don't understand, father. What you're doing is worse than what Paro did. He just said all the male children will get killed. And you're not allowing any children to be born, not male, not female. Paro lo gazar ela ba'olam hazeh. He only did it for this world. What you're doing is for this world and for the next world. So what does Rashi say? Okay, so they'll be born and they'll die. At least they'll get to Olam Haba. But you're not even letting them be born, so they're not ever going to get to Olam Haba. Another thing she said to him. So he says this, but maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't happen. But you're a righteous person. Of course, what you say is going to happen. How do I know this? Shanema, one of the friends of Eov, Eliphaz HaTemani, says to Eov, in his description, he's describing about tzaddikim, righteous people, and he says, they say it, and it comes true. God makes it happen. So when you do this, you're basically sealing our fate. So he listens to his wise words from his daughter, and he brings his wife back. So then he brings everybody, follows suit, and gets back together with their wives. So now they say the following: it should have been he returned her. What does it mean? He took her as if like the first time, right? To take is usually a word for marriage, but here it's returning his wife. Amar Rav Yehuda bar Zvina, he made like a big marriage ceremony. He sat her on the bridal chair. Aharon and Miriam and he has the two of their kids dancing in front of her. And the Malachim said this pasuk, wow, the mother of the sons is happy, is rejoicing. And this is a pasuk, where did this come from? This is the pasuk that comes right before in Tehillim. You'll know from Hallel, right after Moshe v'Akeret Habayit Ema Banim Smecha Hallelujah. The next words are B'tzei Yisrael miMitzrayim, when the Jews got out of Egypt. So they connect this. This happened in the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Et Bat Levi. So now it calls her the daughter of Levi, but Bat doesn't only mean daughter; it also means young, like a young child. Wait, she was 130 years old, and they call her a young girl? Doesn't make any sense. How'd they get to 130? Well, the first thing to know is they were in Egypt for 210 years. And Moshe was 80 years old when he took them out of Egypt. That means that Moshe was born 80 years before the end, 130 years from when they got into Egypt. So now when the Jews went to Egypt, so now we're going to learn that the 130, she must have been born right when they got into Egypt. How do we know this? Well, she's actually the missing person. What missing person? So let's read inside. Amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina, Zo Yochevet, Shehorata Baderech V'Leidata Ben Achomot. They were pregnant with him when they were on their way to Egypt, and then she was born while they got in through the gates there. Shenemal, because it says when it describes her, Yochevet says Asher Yalda Ota LeLevi b'Mitzrayim. She was born to Levi in Egypt. Why born? Well, you learn from the fact that it says born. It says because Leidata b'Mitzrayim ve'en horata b'Mitzrayim. She must have been born there, but they were pregnant with her before. Why is this also important? Because there's a count in Sefer Breshit which says they went down to Egypt 70 people, and then it says how many for each of the wives of Yaakov. And in Leah, it says there were 33. And then it lists them all by name. And there's one missing. There's only 32. So they say that was Yochevet, who they were pregnant with her, but she only, because they went to Egypt as 70, but they came into Egypt as, they went into Egypt as 32 from her family, but when they went into Egypt, there were 33 already. So that's why she's not on that list, but she appears on there. Okay, she's in the numbering, but she doesn't appear by name. So now they say, okay, Amar Rav Yehuda. So now this was all the question. The question was, just 1 second, I want to check one thing. Okay, so here. Okay, now we get to the question. The question was, how could they call her a bat if she was so old? She was 130. So what did they answer? Obviously, Amar Rav Yudash and Oldu Basimanei Na'avu. Right? As part of this, he brings her back and remarries her, and all of a sudden she looks so young again, and it was a miracle. Right? We're going to see all sorts of miracle things that go on in this story. Next, Batal Isha Batele Ben. She gets pregnant and has a son. Now, if you read Rashi on the Torah, you know the story, which is what happened. So she gets pregnant. Then she gives birth early, and that's why she ends up hiding Moshe for 3 months, because the Mitzrayim were keeping track of when women got pregnant. So she got pregnant and had the baby 3 months early, so they didn't know. And then she hides him for 3 months, and then she sends him to the Or when she's expecting the Egyptians are going to come. That's Rashi based on the Midrash on the Torah. This is a different version of the story. And then, by the way, that one works fine with the Psukim, because he takes her back, and then it says she gets pregnant, and then she has a son. But according to our Gemara, she ends up being pregnant 3 months before they got back together. Now, probably he divorced her after the 3 months. In other words, she got pregnant before he divorced her, then he divorced her, and then he brought her back. So now, and she ends up having a child from before, okay, from the first time they were married. Now, if that's the case, how could it possibly say in the Psukim? We're going to see in a minute why the Midrash wants to say this, but they're all dealing with this problem of why did she hide him for 3 months, and why did the Mitzrayim think that he was going to be born 3 months after he was actually born? And what we're going to see is that since she remarried him, the Mitzrayim only checked once they got married, figuring, okay, after they get married, 9 months later, she'll have a baby. And they didn't realize that she was already pregnant. And that's why she got those extra 3 months. So that's a different version than Rashi on the Torah. So now they ask, so the pasuk doesn't make sense to say that she got pregnant now. She got pregnant 3 months earlier. Amar Rav Yehuda bar Zvina, makish ledata lahorata. They want to put in the same pasuk the pregnancy and the birth. They teach you something else. Just like to get pregnant, it's not painful. When she gave birth, it wasn't painful at all. From here we learned that righteous women didn't get curse of Chava. Righteous women don't have chevlei leida. You meet someone who told you it wasn't painful to have childbirth, maybe you'll find out they're at tzedikah. Righteous woman. Batera oto kitofu. So now she sees the child and she says, wow, kitofu. How did she know this? We're going to have a whole bunch of different interpretations. What does this mean that he was tov? He was good. Tanya, Rabbi Meir Omer Tov Shmo. His name was Tov. That's what she was saying. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tov Yashmo, which includes Tov with the name of God. Rabbi Nechanya Omer Hagun L'Neviut. She saw right away he was going to be meant for prophecy. Acherim Omrim Nolad K'shu Mahul. He was born perfect. Usually the Brit Milah needs to fix you, and he was born already circumcised. Chachamim Omrim B'Sha'ah Shenolad Moshe Nitmalei Habayit Kulo Ol. And now they say, it lit up with, the whole house lit up with light. Is a reference to where Moshe later has to put on a misveh because he's so haran or panav right after they get comes down with the 10 Commandments and with the forgiveness for the Jewish people, right? And his face is bright and shining, and he has to cover his face. It's so bright. So even when he was born, you could see that it filled the house with light. How do we get this? Because it says he was tov. Where else does tov appear? God saw the light when he created light. Beginning of Sefer Breshit, and it was good. But now we'll get what we talked about before. They only counted from when he returned to be married to her. She was already pregnant 3 months. So then she realizes she couldn't hide him anymore. Why didn't she just hide him? Continue to hide him. Till this point she had hid him. Why not? Every time they heard a baby was born, what would they do to find the child so people couldn't hide them? Well, babies can be quiet until something sparks them. So, they would bring an Egyptian baby to the house. The baby would start crying, and then they would hear the Jewish baby would start crying along with the Egyptian baby, and then they would know that there was a baby there. So she couldn't hide him anymore. Where do we learn this? There's a reference to this pasuk in a pasuk in Shiur Shirim. Echazu lanu shualim ketanim. These small foxes got to us. Who were these small foxes? Presumably the Egyptian children. Vatikachlo tevet goma. So she takes a tevet goma, okay, made of this material, reeds that's very inexpensive and kind of not strong. Ma'ishna gome. Why did they use gome specifically? So from here you learn that that tzaddikim are always concerned about their money. Okay, they take their money very seriously, more than their bodies. Now, it's not exactly more than their bodies. That would be ridiculous. Not like tzaddikim care so much about money, but they're very careful with their money. Okay, they're stingy about it. But even to protect him, they didn't do this. Why is that? Because they're not involved in theft. Seems like what everybody else is. Not exactly, but they work hard to make their money, and therefore they care for it. They're stingy with it. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, he explains it differently now. If you have something soft, it'll withstand something soft bumping into it, or even something hard. But if you have something hard and something hard bumps into it, it makes a big smash. And she thought that would actually be more difficult for Moshe. And therefore she put something soft to basically be like a bumper. So it would block anything from getting to it. Okay, so now she puts like a clay inside and tar on it. The tar was apparently on the outside, or the pitch, and the inside had the clay. Why is that? She didn't want him to smell that bad smell of the pitch. So she takes the child and she puts him in the soup. What is soup? Rabbi Elazar Omer Yam soup. It was the Yam soup. Now, isn't that confusing? Didn't she put him in the Nile? Well, it's where the Nile hit into the Yam soup. Okay, and then it shows again the connection of in the beginning of his life he was saved by the Yam soup, and then later he got saved by the Yam soup. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amal, moving now to Amud Bet, Agam. It was a lake. They use a pasuk to prove that it's a lake. So now Bat Paro comes down to wash herself by the Nile. A simple reading is she went to take a shower or a bath. But Amar, right, not a shower, they didn't have showers, but she went to bathe herself in the Nile. But Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzada melamed she'arda lurchotz miglulei avia. Obviously, she ends up doing this incredibly good deed, and therefore the Midrash already puts her as, oh, this was a really good person. What was she already going to do? She was going to basically take care of her father's idols, meaning wash herself off of like a spiritual washing of all the idols. She wanted to move beyond where she had been growing up and kind of rejection of her father's idol worship. This is very typical for the Midrash, kind of take people who are good and do good deeds and make them all good, right? Even though she was Egyptian and Pharaoh's daughter, she must have been moving away from his actions. And here we're going to see another pasuk where rachatz doesn't mean to wash, but means to cleanse, meaning spiritual. Im rachatz adoni et soat benot Zion b'chulei. It's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, and basically talks about washing off the bad deeds. But na'arotea holchot. So now it says her na'arot. Okay, she goes to l'chotz b'yeor. Na'arotea holchot al yad yeor. They're walking by the side of the Nile. Why would it tell us this? What's the importance? So again, Midrash. Amar Rabbi Yochanan en halichotzo ela lashon mitah. Going means going to their death. Where do we see going to death? Well, b'chein omer hinei anochi olech lamut. This is when Esav buys the Nazir Adashim and gives the Bechorah over to Yaakov to get this Nazir Adashim. He comes home exhausted and he says, I'm going to die. People always say, I'm going to die. So Holech has to do with going to death sometimes. So it must be they were going to their death. What exactly happened here? Well, Vatera et hateva b'toch hasuf. So they see this, right? Bat Paro sees, that's the next part of words in the pasuk. She sees baby Moshe coming toward her in this teva, in this basket. They realize she's going to save this baby, and it's obvious to them this is a Jewish baby. Amrula gvirtenu. They said, "Excuse me, Miss Bat Paro, minago shel olam. The rules of the world work like this. Melech basar v'adam gozer gzera. The king, a regular king, right, a king of flesh, makes an ordinance. This was, throw the babies in the Nile. It could be not everybody listens to the king, but certainly the people who live in the king's house, his sons and daughters and all the people who live there, are going to do what he says. And as if you're not going to listen to him, certainly no one else is going to listen to him, and at least you have to be listening to him. And you're going against your father's wishes. Gabriel, the angel of the Jews, to protect the Jews, comes and smashes them into the ground. And that's why it says, or they're going to their death. It also could be building on the fact that these na'arot are in the picture here. There's really no reason to mention them. And then they disappear. They're never mentioned again. She sends out her ama, which we're going to talk about in a minute what that means, and she takes the baby. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia, they have a machlok. One said it was her hand that she stretched out. Right, there's that famous midrash which we're going to see today. She stretched out her hand and it extended far because she wasn't so close to it, and with that she was able to bring it in. The word ama in the Torah often means her maidservant. So either she sends her maidservant to get the baby, or she sends her own hand to get the baby. So mandamar yada, the one who says hand, because it says her ama. Her ama is, it's this part of your hand, from your elbow to your hand is an ama. Umandamar shivchata midilok tiv yada. If it really meant hand, it should have said hand. So therefore, they say it must be servant, maidservant. Ulamandamar shivchata. How could she have had a shivcha? What did we learn? Gabriel took all the people with her and smashed them into the ground. Deshir lachada, he left her with one. Why? Because king's daughter never goes by herself. He must have left her with one. Okay, which also maybe shows that she had someone on her side at least. Well, the one who said hand, why didn't it say hand in the pasuk? It says it must be that this tells you amata, that her hand stretched out, and this is where we get it from, that it stretched all the way out to Amar Mar, as we see said elsewhere, and this is in the story of the Megillah, when it talks about Achashverosh, and he put out his scepter to Esther, she was far away, and a miracle happened, and the scepter reached all the way to her, the Midrash says, and there it says, Amar Mar, said, just like this happened with Achashverosh, and his scepter also, with the arm of Pharoah, and also the teeth of Og Melech HaBashan, where it says, Shnei Reshaim Shibarta, Ba'amar Rish Lakish, Al Tkei Shibarta, Ela Sheribavta. He made his teeth grow really long. Why his teeth grow really long? Well, there's a story that he basically held up a mountain to throw on the Jewish people, and then God made the mountain fall on top of him instead. And then, in order that he didn't lift the mountain off of him, his teeth grew and basically went into the mountain and prevented him from being able to lift the mountain up over his head. Okay, so that's what it's a midrash, obviously. Okay, remember, Og Melech HaBashan was this giant. So she opens it up, and then it says, and she showed the baby, which doesn't make any sense. It should be Vatere et hayeled. She saw the baby. Vatere b'bayele. It should have said Vatere. She saw. Amar Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, sherata shchina imo. She saw that the Shekhinah was with him. In other words, again, just like the mother saw him and realized he was destined for greatness, she saw him and saw God there. B'nei nar boche. But then something strange happens. So he's a child, right? It says, b'nei nar boche. And then the baby's crying, but a nar is not a baby. A nar is already a grown child. And also it said, in the same pasuk, he turns from a baby into a child. So how could this be? Something strange happened. He was a baby, but his voice was like an older kid. Rabbi Yehud, Amar Rabbi Nechemia. Kind of a crazy commentary is that he says, "In Kenes, he told Moshe Rabbeinu Baal Mum. You're making him into a Baal Mum, a blemished person. Like it's like an alien. It's a baby talking with the voice of an older kid. Doesn't make any sense. And some people say that he wouldn't be able to be with the Levites in the temple and sing with them, even though really Levites, there is no such thing as a blemish. Anyway, whether he means a blemish like that would really hassle him, make him problematic for work in the temple, or really maybe it's just saying, well, Moshe was blemished. Why does it say the nar is boche? Because she made a chupat na'arim, like a chuppah. It's called a chupat na'arim. Like she made a little chuppah there. What exactly it means is unclear. But what it was showing was there was a sign there that the mother was worried that she would never see him married, right? This is the biggest fear of parents, child's born, she's sending him off. She thinks, oh my God, he's going to die and I'll never get to go to his wedding, which is actually ironic foreshadowing, because in the end, she doesn't go to his wedding because he gets married in Midian. He does have a wedding, but she doesn't get to go. And that's what the nar is a reference to. There's another midrash, by the way, that the nar is actually Aharon. It's very interesting because we know Miriam was standing there watching, which we're going to get back to her very soon, but we never see Aaron in the picture. And here, this kind of puts Aaron in the scene. He was also doing what Miriam was doing. So then it says right away in that same pasuk, she has mercy on him, and she says he's a Jewish child. Okay. Minayada, how on earth did she know he was Jewish? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, how else do you know someone's Jewish? She saw he was circumcised. Zeh. Now, it should say, who? He is from the Yaldei Evrim. Zeh is this. Why is Zeh? She said a prophecy that she didn't even realize what she was saying. This is the last one that's going into the year, or no one else is going to be thrown into the year or into the Nile anymore. Why is that? Well, we're going to see right now. When they say to you, go to the sorcerers, the ones people who are bringing up people from the dead. People who just chirp, 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 and they make these noises and they say things that they have no idea what they mean. Sofin ve'inam yodim matzofim. They look and they don't know, right? And they say things and they don't know what they're saying. Ma'agim ve'ena yodim ma ma'agim. Okay, they say things, they have no idea what they mean. They see things, they don't understand what they're seeing. These are the guys who looked at the stars and said, Ra'u shemoshi'an shel Yisrael b'mayim hu lokeh. They knew that what they saw in the stars was the one who's supposed to save the Jewish people his downfall is going to be with water. So so what they do, let's get rid of him before he saves the Jewish people. Throw all the babies into the water, and with that we'll fulfill what it says. When Moshe's mother sent him when his parents sent him into the water, they realized that it had come true. He had been thrown into the water, and that was it. And it was gone. They had nothing to worry about anymore, which totally wasn't true. So they canceled all the gzerot about killing the children. And they didn't realize that what was the water that's going to bring Moshe's downfall much later in his life. It's because of the waters, right? The water and the rock. That's what brought about his downfall, not the waters now. Says these are the waters that they fought. Hema, what's Hema? Hema makes it sound like we already know from these waters. And this is about the Miriam that Moshe got punished for. Hema shera'u itstagnine paro b'ta'u. These are the waters that the astrologers of Pharoah thought, right? These are the waters they were referring to that they got all confused about and thought that it was something else. Moshe, and this is where Moshe says, okay, so first of all, this goes back to Bat Paro said, Zeh, this is the last one who's going to get killed because it's Tegninim, the astrologers broke, right? So Paro, okay, it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. He's already gone in the water, but it wasn't true. And because he did get saved in the end and only gets punished by water much later in life. And this is where Moshe says, it's actually interesting because it sounds like he's saying to the Jewish people, but the pasuk is actually a pasuk where he's talking to God. This is when the Jews in the desert were complaining about the meat. And then Moshe says, what, God, you're going to give them all this meat? How is that possible? There's so many people. You have 600,000 mouths to feed. Amar lahem Moshe Yisrael. Bishvili nitzaltem kulchem. Ragli really means 600,000 of you are because of me. Hey, Ragli, once in a while, Lavan and Yaakov, there's a place where Ragli means on my account. He's saying, you're 600,000 because of me. It's all my doing because when I was saved from the water, that saved all the rest of you. Or when I was thrown into the water, actually, it saved the rest of you. Rabbi Chanina Bar Papama. Otoyom, 21 b'Nisan. Too bad the daf wasn't off by 2 days, but it was the 21st of Nisan. We're now on the 19th. Okay, so the day he was saved by Bat Paro was the 21st of Nisan. What's unique about that date? Okay, do your math. Comes out on the 7th day of Pesach. So the Malachim said to God, Moshe Rabbeinu, in the future, we see he's going to sing a song praising you for splitting the Dead Sea. And, the Red Sea. And you're going to have him die on this day? Obviously, it's story, right? Because obviously he's not going to sing if he's going to die right now. But they're saying, we see in the future what's going to be, and you're going to kill him today. This is the day he was destined to sing at the Red Sea. Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina Amar, Oto Hayom Shisha b'Sivan. No, you have the dates wrong, he says. It was the 6th of Sivan. So we have a debate. What day was Moshe saved? Was it the 6th of Sivan or was it the 21st of Nisan? What's the 6th of Sivan? The day they got the Torah. According to his version, the angel said to God, Master of the world, sorry, the one who's supposed to get the Torah on this day. It's going to die on this day. So now they're going to say the one who says, on the 6th of Sivan, so there's 3 months, makes sense. 6th of Sivan, right? From why? Where was he born? We all know. When was he born? Tamar Mar, B'Shiv'a ba'Adar met, u'B'Shiv'a ba'Adar nolad Moshe. So on the 7th of Adar he was born. On the 7th of Adar on the 7th of Adar he died, and it was the same day that he was born, on the 7th of Adar. So now they say, right? Remember, she hid him for 3 months and then put him in the water. So it makes perfect sense. Adar, Nisan, Iyar, right? And then Sivan. So that's exactly 3 months, from the 7th to the 7th, right? So Adar to Nisan, Nisan to Iyar, Iyar to Sivan. Perfect. 7 to 6. Perfect 3 months. But you don't have 3 months in between the 7th of Adar and the 21st of Nisan. No, well, you actually do. Because it was a Shana where they added an extra Adar, which is kind of funny because the whole thing of adding an extra Adar is so that Pesach will come out in the spring. Obviously, this was way before Pesach, but okay. And Rubosha Rishon, Rubosha Lacharom Emsei Shalem. So you have the majority of the first month, the majority of the last month, and a full middle month. So what do you have? You have Adar, most of the month of Adar Rishon, an entire month of Adar Sheni, and most of the month of Adar of Nisan, because it's still the 21st. So there you end up with 3 months. It wasn't 3 months on the calendar, it was about 3 months. Vatomer Achato El Bat Paro. So now the sister comes out. We go back to Miriam, where we started from. Should I go and call you a nursemaid from the Jewish women? Why from the Ivriot? From here you learn, they took him to all the Egyptian women, and he wasn't willing to nurse. Amal, he said to himself, my mouth is going to talk eventually to God. Is going to nurse, suckle from something impure? No way, no how. Which is a very interesting line. Why? If you take this literally and halachically, then it sounds like it's what we call midah chasidut. It's just a good thing not to do, because saying I'm unique, I'm going to talk to the guy. But it sounds like a regular baby could actually nurse from a non-Jewish woman. It's not considered, let's say, not kosher. There's actually a debate among the commentaries about whether we say it's just a midah chasidut, better not to do it, but theoretically you could, or it's really forbidden. Okay? And even if you would say it's really forbidden, the way you would understand this is to say, well, Moshe had no choice. Otherwise, he would have died, right? So if it's pikuach nefesh, obviously you could do anything. But it's an interesting sugya to think about whether you can actually hire a nursemaid who's not Jewish. B'hainu dichtiv, and that's where it says in this pasuk, we get it from, et mi yoreh de'al, read the whole pasuk, et mi yoreh de'al, who's going to teach us, ve'mi yavin shmoah, who's going to understand, mulei mechalav atikei mishadayim, the ones who separated themselves from chalav, and from Shadayim, from the breast. In other words, one of these, we're talking about, obviously it doesn't mean this literally, but it's saying Moshe, who basically said, oh no, I'm not going to do this. He's going to become a big leader. Yoreh de'ah is someone who teaches, who becomes a big leader. The ones who separated themselves and said, no, I'm not going to nurse from these women. But Tomer la bat paro, lechi. So bat paro says, go. You have to read the rest of the pasuk. It says, Lechi vatelecha alma. They call her an alma. And alma is usually an older girl, and she was only 6 years old at the time. So they say it shows that she went his rizut, like an alma is like a very strong young girl, like someone in 15, 16, like at her big moment of strength. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani amar ha'alma shehe'elima et vareh. She went with alma, like she hid. She concealed from Bat Paro who she was and what she was going to do. But Tomer la Bat Paro. So then Yocheved comes and Bat Paro says to her, Hilichi et hayeled hazeh. Why Hilichi? It's a bit of a strange language. Amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina mitnab'et ve'ena yodeh ma mitnab'ah. She was prophesizing, but didn't know what she was prophesizing. Hilichi ha shelichi. What she was saying was, this is yours. Shelichi. It's yours. Hilichi, shelichi. It's not exactly the same, but world of Midrash, you can do that. Take him, he's yours. And then she said, and I'll pay you to do this. Amar Rabbi Chama b'Rabbi Chanina lo dayan letzadikim shemachzirin lahem avedatan is not enough, right? Tzadikim, not only do they get things that were lost, get back to them like Moshe, but they even get rewarded for it, right? Here she got paid to do it, do something she obviously really wanted to do. And they even say, the commentaries say there's midah keneged midah here, because if you remember, she was one of the midwives who gave food and sustenance to sustain the Jewish babies, and now her baby is coming back to her, and she's being able to sustain him. But back to the theme of midah keneged midah, measure for measure, if you forgot how we got here. But so now we fast forward, we're now at Kriyat Yam Suf, and Miriam, she's called the Neviah, and she takes out the tov, and she starts, so all the women go after her, and they start singing. Achot Aharon v'lo achot Moshe. Why is she called the sister of Aaron? She's the sister of Moshe, or at least both of them. So Amar Amarav, v'Amre Amarav Nachman Amarav. And one of them said in the name of Rav, Melamed Shaitam Nab'et She Achot Aaron. She was prophesying even when she was only the Achot of Aaron. And tomorrow we're going to see what her prophecy was and what the reaction to her prophecy was before even Moshe was born. And that's why she's called the Nevi'ah Achot Aaron, because even when she was only Achot Aaron, she was still, even at that young age, she was a prophet. That's it for today. Quick review. Again, it's a lot of different things. We start off with Kalev and Miriam, and all these psukim showing drashot about what were their strengths, Kalev and Miriam, or even with Miriam, somewhat her weaknesses. It also showed that Kalev went out of his way and married someone who nobody really wanted to be with, and that also shows his strength. We saw through all that. Then Pharoah apparently told even the Egyptian babies had to be killed according to this midrash. Then we see, why did Amram, what happened with him? He separated from his wife, caused everyone else to separate from their wives. And then Miriam says, no, don't do this. You're being worse than Pharoah. And then it kind of reminds us a little bit of the Haggadah, where we say, Pharoah only said the males, and Lavan wanted to destroy everyone. Here also, even Amram himself, according to this midrash, was trying to wipe out the Jewish people. And then we have the Bat Levi, and she was 130, and how could she be called a Bat? And then we said, how did she realize when he was born that he was destined for greatness? Why did she hide him for 3 months? What was the order of events? We saw a very different version than the one we generally know of. Then she couldn't hide him anymore because that's how the Mitzrim would know. They would come and find them. Then she builds this teva. Why of that material, the soft material? Then she puts in she puts the chemar on the inside so he didn't smell the zephyr on the outside. Then she puts him in the soup. What exactly is the soup? We saw different interpretations. Pharoah comes, right, and she wants to basically do something that's so atypical that all the people with her say, no, you can't do this. So Gabrielle gets rid of them all. They all die. She ends up maybe with a maidservant, maybe by herself. We have two versions. Was it her arm she stretches out, and did it stretch miraculously very far? Or did she send her shifcha to do it? Either which way, it's clear she was farther away from him to really get him. Then she sees him, who's the Na'ar who was crying. What did she see? How did she know he was Jewish? Why did he get saved on that day? What day of the week what day of the calendar did it come out on? Two different versions. Was it on the day of Kriyat Yam Suf, where the sea was split many years later, or was it the day of where they got the Torah? And which one was the one that saved Moshe? How did the star readers of Paro mess up in their understanding of things and think that Moshe was going to be destroyed by water? So they thought his being sent into the water was already his downfall. We saw how she got her to get her mother from the Moshe wouldn't nurse from any of the Egyptian women, and that's how he gets her to do that. And then how she gets rewarded, Yocheved, because she even gets money from doing this, and how Miriam was a Nevi'ah even from the time of before Moshe was born, and we're going to see exactly what was her prophecy. We're going to see it had to do with Moshe. We actually saw it before. We're going to see it again. It came up in the daf, I think it was yesterday. Wishing everybody Moadim L'Simcha, and see you tomorrow.